Just in the previous session, we discussed about the residential status and its scope. Residential, we discussed about in detail about the greetings, everyone. In the previous session, we discussed about the residential status of a company, and we also discussed about the residential status of any other person, that is artificial juridical person or maybe local authorities, etc. We also discussed about the present chart before you, that is the scope of total income on the basis of residence. Here we have already examined the basic rules about this. We'll continue to understand this better, and we will also discuss about the incidence of taxes. That is how and what on the basis of residential status, how are we going to decide the tax liability? That is whether this income comes under the liability for taxation or not. So to start with, when we talk about this scope, let us just discuss few concept that comes again and again while we are discussing about things. So first is your received income. Any income is said to be received when it first comes into the hands or control of the SSE. It refers to the first occasion when the recipient gets the money as income, whether he is getting it in cash or in kind or by way of credit to his account. Once income has been received, subsequent transfers or remittance of that amount to another place, even to India, does not, constitute a fresh receipt. Some important points to be noted here is that the place of receipt is where the income first reaches the SSE. The mere remittance or retransfer from abroad to India is not treated as receipt in India if the income was already received outside India. So it is, if it is remittance or retransfer, then we do not consider it. Then next important point to be noted is that the actual receipt includes income received by the SSE himself or on his behalf by an agent or maybe a representatives. For example, we can say actual receipt in India. We can say that suppose Mr. A, he is an Indian resident. He received his salary directly in India from an Indian company. Then the income is received in India and therefore it will be taxable in India. Similarly, if we say that income is received from outside India, suppose there's Mr. B, he is an Indian citizen, he is working in UK. He receives his salary in London and later he remits part of it to his parents in India. Then this amount is sent to India will not be treated as income received in India because it was first already received abroad in London. I hope this is clear. Then we have maybe we can say another example can be Mr. C earns a commission income from commission income abroad, which is collected on his behalf by some agent in India. Again, this is the income which is received in India but through an agent, not directly. Okay, so these things have to be kept in mind. Then we talk about next, that is the deemed income to be received income. Certain types of income, they are not actually received. But the income tax deems them as received in India for the taxation purpose. This concept ensures that certain benefits or credits that come into existence within India, they are taxed even though there is no physical receipt of money. We can say that Section 7 of the Income Tax Act 1961, it gives, few examples of deemed to be received income, that is employer's contribution to a recognized provident fund in excess of prescribed limits. Then we have interest credited to the company, to the employee's recognized provident fund, that is beyond the exempt limit. Then another example can be transfer balance from an unrecognized to a recognized provident fund. Then another example for deemed to be received income is tax deducted at source (TDS), which is considered as income received by the SSE even though the payer withholds the tax. Maybe on the basis of these points, maybe we can go for, suppose Mr. A is an employee, Mr. A's employer credits 70,000 as employer's contribution to his recognized provident fund, that is RPF. Out of this, 12,000 exceeds the price, maybe the prescribed exemption limit. Here the extra 12,000 that is transferred to Mr. A's RPF, it will be called deemed to be received income in India, even though Mr. A has not actually withdrawn it. Though though directly it is paid as an excess amount on RPF, but he has not withdrawn it. But still, it will be deemed to be his income. Then we have the next terminology, that is accrue or arise. Accrue or arise income. The term accrue or arise means the right to receive the income. That is, the income has become due to the SSE whether or not it has been actually received. So the source of income has matured and the SSE has a legally enforceable claim to receive it. So when the SSE earns the right to receive the amount, the income is said to have accrued or arise even if the payment is delayed. I hope this is clear. That means maybe he is getting the amount just now, later on, not just now, but later on. But he is supposed to get it. It was to this year's income, but he is getting some, there's some delay in the payment, but it will be assumed to be for this year only, and therefore that is there to be. So accrual or arising of income is different from receipt of income. I hope this is clear. The place where the source exists and the right to receive arises determines where income accrues. And income accrues when it becomes due and arises when it results from a source. I hope this is clear. That is, once it is, the source from wherever you are getting the income, that is called arise. And as and when, suppose, and that source is going to pay you on 1st of January, that is the accrues. And it is, it becomes due on 1st of January, it accrues. With the maybe help of an example, let us make it more clear. Mr. A lends rupees 10 lakhs to Mr. B, maybe on 1st January 2025 at 10% annual interest. Interest of rupees 25,000 becomes due by 31st March 2025, but will be received later in June. So rupees 25,000 here accrues to Mr. A in the financial year 2024, which will be taxable in that year. Similarly, to understand the salary accrued but unpaid, suppose Mr. G's March 2025 salary, that is rupees 50,000, is paid in April 2025. The salary here is accrued in March 2025, previous year, that is previous year 24-25. Though income is received in April, it will be taxable in 25-26. So this is an example for accrued but unpaid. Okay. So then the last term here, that is deemed to accrue or arise. Certain incomes are not actually accrued or arisen in India, but the Income Tax Act deems them to have accrued or arisen in India to ensure fair taxation on income connected with India. Here it is the section 9 of the Income Tax Act 1961 that explains. This section covers the incomes that are connected to India through business connections, property, assets, or sources in India, even if the payment is made outside India. So some of the examples of maybe deemed or to accrue or arise in India are income through business connections in India as per section 9 para 1 subpara 1, Roman number 1. Then income from property, assets or sources in India. This is another example of deemed to accrue or arise. Income rent from the property located in India is deemed to accrue in India. Salary earned in India. Salary for services rendered in India is taxable in India even if paid abroad. Then dividend paid by an Indian company, a dividend paid by an Indian company, it's always deemed to accrue in India. Then we have royalty or fee for technical services, maybe services. So, if paid by an Indian resident or utilized in India, it is deemed to accrue in India. So, some examples can be quoted to explain them better. For example, Mr. A foreign engineer, he works for 3 months in India and he receives salary in the US. Here, the salary will be taxable in India because it is the salary is deemed to accrue in India. Here, the salary, this is a good example for salary paid abroad, but it is earned in India and therefore it is taxable in India. Then royalty from India may be another point that was there as an example. So maybe a UK company, it provides a software to an Indian firm and it receives the payment abroad. So the royalty is deemed to accrue in India under section 9 para 1 para subpara 6. Then this is a good example for royalty from India. Similarly, suppose Mr. A non-resident, owns a house in Delhi and he receives the rent in London. Rent is deemed to accrue in India, but the property is situated in India. So here, this is a good example for rent from property in India. Similarly, there are further notes, that is, according to section 9 para 1 of the Income Tax Act, there are certain, Income Tax Act 1961, there are certain types of income that are treated as deemed to accrue in India or arise in India, even if the income has not actually arisen or accrued in India. This deeming provision ensures that income having an economic nexus with India is brought under the Indian tax net, regardless of the place of receipt. So here maybe we can talk on few points which are there before you. Income from a business connection in India, that is any income that arises directly or indirectly through or from any business connection in India, is deemed to accrue or arise in India. The term here business connection refers to any relationship between a business carried on outside India and an activity carried on in India that contributes directly or directly to earning income. For example, if a foreign company sells goods in India through an Indian agent, the profit attributable to operations carried out in India will be deemed to accrue in India. However, the income accruing to non-residents through business connections, connections limited to the purchase of goods in India for export is not taxable in India. Okay. Next, we have the point income from house, any property, asset, or source of income situated in India. That is, any income that arises or accrues from the property or any asset or source of income located in India is taxable in India. This includes income such as rent from property situated in India or profits from business operating within India. For example, maybe we can say that is the rental income from rental income from a building in India. It is taxable in India, which if even if the owner is the non-resident. So this was about income from property, asset, or source of income situated in India. Next, we come to income from transfer of capital assets situated in India. That is the gains that arise from the transfer of a capital asset situated in India. They are deemed to accrue or arise in India, regardless of the residential status of the transferor. For example, a US based company sells its shares in an Indian company. Any capital gains from this transactions are deemed to accrue in India. This rule was strengthened after the Vodafone case, and now indirect transfers of Indian assets through overseas transactions can also be taxed under Section 9, para 1, subpara 1, that is Roman number 1. Then we move on to the next, that is salary earned in India and received outside India. Salary is deemed to accrue or arise in India if it is earned for services rendered in India, even if it is received outside India. For example, a foreign employee working in India for 3 months receives salary in his home country. The salary for those 3 months is deemed to accrue in India and is taxable here. Then next we have the salary, that is, salary payable by the government of India to an Indian citizens for services rendered outside India. Under section 9, para 1, subpara 3, Roman number 3, again I remind for this, salary payable by the government of India to a citizen of India for services rendered outside India, for example, diplomats or embassy staff, etc., is deemed to accrue or arise in India. Similarly, such salary is taxable in India, though relief may be available under Section 16 or relevant double section avoidance agreement also, that is DTAAs. Okay. Then next we have the dividend paid by the Indian company outside India. Now, when we talk of this, I think the dividends that are declared or the distributed or they are paid by an Indian company, they are deemed to accrue or arise in India, even if they are paid to a non-resident or remitted or they are remitted abroad. Hence, all shareholders of the Indian companies, they are subject to Indian tax laws on such individual dividend income, irrespective of where they reside. So this has to be, kept in mind that all shareholders of Indian companies, wherever they are subject to Indian tax laws, no doubt, wherever they are situated, it's not a point of concern. Next, we have the income by way of interest. After dividend, we come to interest. That is, interest income is deemed to accrue outside India or arise in India if it is payable by the government of India, if it is payable by the resident, except where it is related to a business or source of income located outside India, or it is payable by a non-resident where it is related to a business or source of income in India. For example, we can say interest paid by an Indian bank to a foreign lender on funds used in India is deemed to accrue in India. Then we can let's talk of income by way of royalty. That is section 9, para 1, sub para 6. Again, 6 is Roman number. So royalty is deemed to accrue or arise in India if it is payable by the government or a resident, except where the royalty is for a business or source of income which is located outside India. Then we have by a government of India, or here we have by way of then next we have the income by way of fees for technical services, FTS, section 9, para 1 and sub para 7. That is for technical services. So fees for technical services are deemed to accrue or arise in India if they are payable by the government of India or a resident, unless the services are utilized for business outside India, or maybe a non-resident. A non-resident if the services are used for business used for a business or source of income in India. And technical services means managerial, technical or consultancy services, but they exclude payment for construction, assembly or mining activities, etc. So technical services are specifically defined this way. So what we see that these are the incomes that we have discussed, what are there on your slide. That is income from business connection, from property, from capital asset, earned in India, received outside or by the government to a citizen of India, etc., etc. We have to check the source from where the income is arising and when it is getting accrued. And on the basis of that, we will decide the tax liability. Yes. Coming to the incidence of tax for the resident and ordinary resident. Till now, we were talking about deciding the residential status, and the residential status has to be decided on the basis of different identities, that is individual, HUF, company, any other person, etc., etc. But now we come to that how do we compute or how do we decide the tax liability of the individuals? Okay, how do we decide that? Or not only in individual but on anybody, a body, once we decide the residential status. So when we talk about the incidence of taxes, let me first explain that and then we move further. Under the Income Tax Act 1961, the incidence of tax means the extent to which an individual's income is subject to taxation in India. The taxability of income depends on the residential status of the SSE, which is determined under Section 6 of the Act. A person who qualifies as the resident and ordinarily resident in India is subject to the widest scope of tax liability. That is, his global income is taxable in India. So, the governing provision for the scope of total income is Section 5, para 1 of the Income Tax Act, which specifies the income that are chargeable to tax for a resident SSE. So this is the meaning of incidence of tax, and I hope it is clear to all of you. Next, we move to the scope of total income of a resident and ordinarily resident. As per Section 5.1, the total income of a person who is resident and ordinarily resident in India shall include all income from whatever source dividends derived, from whatever source it is derived, which is maybe it is received or deemed to be received in India during the previous year. This will include all income that is actually received in India, regardless of whether it was earned in India or abroad. It also includes income that is deemed to be received under the Act. For example, maybe the employer's contribution to the RPF in excess of whatever prescribed limits are there. For example, Mr. A, an ROR, that is resident and ordinarily resident, received rupees 2 lakh in India from his foreign employer, and this income is taxable in India since it is received in India even if it was earned abroad. Then similarly, what is the another component that is we consider the scope that comes under the scope of total income, that is accrues or arises or is deemed to accrue or arise to him in India during the previous year. So this means this covers income earned in India, whether or not it is actually received during that year. Income will be said to accrue or arise when the SSC obtains a right to receive it. So the term deemed to accrue or arise refers to certain incomes that by legal fiction under Section 9 are considered to accrue in India even if they actually accrue outside India. For example, interest on an Indian bank deposit or rent from property located in India is deemed to accrue in India. Similarly, if the royalty is received from an Indian company for the use of a patent in India, it is deemed to accrue in India. Next provision or next scope of total income is accrues or arises to him outside India during such year. This clause extends the tax liability of an ROR to foreign income, that is income that accrues or arises outside India. Even if the income is not received in India, it will be taxable because it accrued or arose outside India to a person who is resident and ordinarily resident in India. For example, suppose Mr. A, an ROR, he earns dividend from the shares held in a company registered in the US. Then this income accrued outside India, but it is taxable in India because he is an ROR. So after understanding these backgrounds, that is in the previous session, previous slides when we discussed about some important terminologies, and now we discuss the incidence of taxes in case of ordinarily resident, then I hope the things are more clear to you, and these things will help you in deciding the not only the residential status but further to that the incidence of tax also. So we discussed this much in this session. In the next session we will proceed to the incidence of taxes for ordinarily but not ordinarily resident. Okay, that is not ordinarily resident. Thank you so much. Thank you for today.